What's up, everybody? It's Jeremy Minnick with the Game Changing Roofer Podcast, a show created to share the stories of roofers who are changing the game in the roofing industry. This show is meant to help roofers build better businesses and better lives. My guest today had dropped out of college and started her sales career selling Cutco knives, where she quickly became a top performer. Recruited by a storm chasing company, she switched to roofing sales, where again she became a top performer. But her entry into roofing sales wasn't easy, and the training she received left her all alone to figure it out. Fast forward, and she spent the last 6 years helping roofing sales rep and roofing company owners up their sales game and build better businesses. Here on the show today is perhaps a roofing consultant who needs no introduction, Becca Switzer from Roof Sales Mastery. Welcome to the show, Becca.
What's going on, Jeremy? How's it going today?
It's great. It's great. I'm really pumped to have you on the show. I think you've got a ton to share. Again, I really do in some senses think you need no introduction. You've got a big social media following, big following on YouTube. You're constantly putting out content, constantly putting out videos, written resources. You've been very active during COVID-19 and everything that's going on. So again, it's a pleasure to have you here on the show and for you to share, again, a ton of insights to roofing sales reps and roofing business owners. So kind of without further ado, almost from the standpoint of your story, you know, on your website, you have this kind of line that you talk about quite a bit, which is, you know, who's this teenage girl that, and what could she possibly, you know, teach me about selling roofs? That's a line that you use often.
Yeah.
And so without further ado, sort of, who are you? Where did you come from? And why should roofing sales reps and roofing company owners listen to you?
So from birth, my parents have always told stories of me like hustling. Ever since I was a tiny child, like 4 or 5 years old, I've been selling minnows that I caught in the stream to my neighbors, holding parades and selling candy, flowers, building sailboats out of construction material and selling that stuff. So I think people talk about being a natural born salesperson, and I guess I would fit that bill. But when I graduated high school, you know, everybody's like, well, I guess you go to college. That's the next thing you do. So I did go to University of Iowa for like 2 years. But after my sophomore year, I came home to Omaha, Nebraska, Council Bluffs, Iowa for the summer, just to like go make money. And then I was planning on going back to school. But I happened to get for anybody who's familiar with Cutco cutlery, I got a recruiting letter in the mail. And I remember opening it, and one of my friends who was there was like, don't do it. I think that's a scam. It's like an MLM thing, or it's like I think it's like selling kitchen cutlery and stuff like that. And everybody's trying to talk me out of it. And I'm like, I think I'm going to check it out. And so I went anyway, and I'm like, I can do this. I can sell knives. And I ended up doing really, really well in Cutco. I was like the first 10K fast starter in the Omaha district. And very long story short, decided like over the summer I had made 30 or 40 grand or something. And I go, I'm not going to go back to school. Like, what the heck am I doing there? I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm obviously really good at selling. I'm just going to keep chasing this. So fast forward about 2 years, I sold Cutco. My former husband at the time, we met through Cutco as well. And we got married, and he was like, he got approached by a recruiter, basically somebody who was at the time the vice president of one of the largest storm restoration, you know, companies in the country. And he was breaking off to start his own company, but he was headhunting really good salespeople from Cutco, because Cutco is a direct sales company that's been around since like 1949 or something like that. And they have a badass training system. Like you can take anybody who has 2 brain cells to rub together, and if they follow the training that they give you at Cutco, like you will sell some knives and you'll make some money. So the guy that was recruiting us was like, you guys are already cut out for this. It's going to be like shooting fish in a barrel with your sales skills. Like, it's going to be no problem, you know, showing us all these commission checks and telling us how much money we can make. And so we're like, okay. So I sell all my shit. I pack up the rest of it, put it in Rubbermaid containers, pack up our car. We drive halfway across the country to our first location was actually Connecticut, which turned into Pennsylvania shortly thereafter, and started this roof sales training thing. And we got there, and our training was like, okay, you know, our manager's like running on fumes and Red Bull. He's like, yeah, so follow Chris here for a couple days, like ride around with him and listen, record some stuff on your phone. And then here's a stack of contracts, knock 100 doors a day. You'll figure it out. It's a numbers game. And I was like, what? I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know anything about roofs. I don't know anything about shingles. I know nothing about insurance. I've never climbed a ladder in my life. And I'm like, and I've never done, what do I say? I'm like, is there like a book? No, not really. I'm like, what? So, but here I am, like halfway across. I mean, I've left my life behind. I have nothing to my name now, and this is what I've chosen to do. So I remember like going out, the company we were supposed to be working for, like the storm company, was Steve Kemper Builders at the time. And I remember like the first door I knocked on and talked to somebody, my mouth got so dry and I was like panicked. And I said, Scott Kemper Builders. I was like, I'm like, Scott, shit. And so long story short, I could go into details about, the discomfort of starting that, but it was like, okay, this is a very sink or swim situation and I just have to figure it out on my own. So through the school of hard knocks, right, over the course of the year, I only worked for 4 months that year. I worked from, it was the month of July, August, September, October, and I left November 2nd. But between like door zero and leaving November 2nd, I sold 650,000 and took home like 105 grand. And I'm like, oh, okay. So even if I don't know what I'm doing, I can make really good money at this. Like, what would it look like if I actually figured it out, like got trained? And so my former husband at the time and I were Googling over the winter. We took off like 5 months to go snowboarding that winter. So we're like, we've got money in the bank. We just made 6 figures in 4 months. Let's go snowboard for 4 or 5 months in Colorado, and then we'll come and do it again next year, right? But over that time, we were looking for any storm restoration training of any kind, like Googling it. And, Google's like, did you mean something else? There was nothing, like there were just no resources out there. This would have been back in, I guess, 2010, 2011. And we finally found a small like seminar in Frisco, Texas. And where it was maybe like $1,000 a pop or something like that to go down there. So we went down and sat through this little seminar in a small hotel room with maybe 22 other people or something for 2 days. And I was thinking like, this is what people are paying this much money for. And they're not really walking away with a whole lot of value. Like I know so much more that I could share with these people that have come here to learn how to do this roof sale stuff. And, you raise your hand and put in your 2 cents throughout the seminar. Hey, this is something that's really worked for me. Like in the past, when I've run into this is what I've done. And at the end of it, people weren't going up to the instructors to ask questions and pick their brains. They were coming up to like me and Trent. And so we're like, I think we really have something here. So I continued selling roofs for several years. We ended up moving to central Pennsylvania and then doing a storm in western Pennsylvania. And then we went to St. Louis and we started our own roofing company for a couple of years. But during that time, I just like zoned in and started brain dumping everything that I knew. Like I ended up writing my ebook then and like dumping a bunch of content. I'd figured out this supplementing stuff really well. Like the manager of our company before we started our own company in St. Louis, I remember was like, what are you doing to your claims? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, your profits are like 70%. And I'm like, well, I'm supplementing the shit out of them. And he goes, yeah, but everybody's supplementing. How are you getting all this stuff? He's like, can you teach the rest of the guys like at the sales meeting? So I knew I had a bunch of material to offer and stuff like that. So it led me to write the book. And then I started a webinar and stuff like that. All of that to say, I know this is a long journey to go through, but I ended up creating all this material and I knew that I could teach, the first thing that I wanted to teach people was the supplementing stuff, because I knew I know I can teach you how to add at least $2,500 to each of your claims across the board. And for one salesperson who does 100 claims, that's $250,000 that you add to your bottom line in profit. And if you're a 50% salesman, you're taking home $125,000 extra dollars if you do that to your claims. And so that led me to create my first program, the Advanced Sales and Supplement Training Program, and start advertising on Facebook. But, who's the 17-year-old girl? What could she possibly teach me about roofs? You have to understand that I was at the time, 25-year-old girl, looks like I'm 17, in a male-dominated industry, starting to put out and advertise content on Facebook that I can teach you, big, macho roof sales guy, right? Blue collar. I can teach you how to ramp up your business, scale it, increase your profits by 40%, yada, yada, yada. And so it was an interesting way to enter, but I just, I like to just, the power of acknowledgement is something that I teach in sales. And it's like, look, what's the elephant in the room? Well, when people see me, they probably think, what's this chick going to teach me about roof sales, right? And so that's kind of what I lead with, because that, breaks the ice a little bit. And then when people get to listen to content, they're like, oh shit, there's like some really good stuff there.
Right.
So
yeah, that's first of all, great story. And two, it's hilarious because even your testimonial, you have a testimonial, I think, on the homepage of your site where somebody quite literally begins the testimonial pretty much by saying that. Like the video begins where he goes, honestly, I didn't really think I was going to get a lot out of this training, and I was blown away. It's a lot of testimonials like that, or, I couldn't believe how much value was delivered. So it makes great sense. And I really look forward to unpacking. We'll touch upon this a little bit today, kind of some of the Xactimate and some of the supplementing tactics and things like that. But in any case, just kind of one thing that really stuck out to me about your journey is that, one, you really are someone who, in a sense, has been in the wild west almost of like skin restoration, at least from the standpoint of in the new digital age and with regards to sort of supplementing tactics, especially. Right. And I think, especially in the realm of supplementing, that's really where you kind of broke into the space, maybe in your most like major way. And then you've been able to transform it from there. And so maybe that's a good segue to talk a little bit about, for especially roofers and especially roofing sales reps. We're going to unpack a little bit about maybe some of the most common challenges you think that they face in the industry, maybe some of the biggest problems that roofing sales reps, especially who are taking and entering your trainings, you hear that they have, that they have, you see it all the time. And so let's maybe begin there, especially with regards for roofing sales reps. What are some of those biggest challenges, or maybe the biggest failures and mistakes that you see roofing sales reps making in the industry today?
So when I started Roof Sales Mastery first, they talk about your customer avatar, right? Like who is the person that's going to be buying your stuff. And what I was focusing on was who's like me, because I was a sales rep, right? And so I was thinking, like, the thing that I kept asking all the time was, what do I say? Like, that was the biggest challenge. I'm like, I can do this, but what do I say? Like, just give me, in car sales, they call it word tracks, right? So you've got your scripts and your pitches and stuff like that. There wasn't really any of that. And so I think some of the biggest challenges that sales reps get is, it's a giant one. It's like, they're not receiving formal training. And therefore what they're being told to do is just go out and knock more doors. It's a numbers game, right? So challenge number one is they don't receive formal training. Now, something that I've actually shifted into kind of telling or communicating to my audience is, look, if this was any other business, let's say any other industry, right? Let's say I wanted to go and become a pediatrician. What would I have to do? I'd have to go to college. I would have to go to college. I would have to pay for my degree and invest the time studying and the money to get the education, right? So instead of being a salesperson and going to a roof sales business and going, can't you show me what to do? Take it into your own hands, which is taking your education into your own hands in the same way as you'd go get a college degree. Good news is a college degree is way more expensive. You go 6 figures into debt and you have to dedicate 4 to 6 years of your life trying to get this degree. Roof sales is much, much cheaper. And for a couple $100 or a couple $1,000, you can go and get an education and make 6 figures in 4 months like I did, right? But I think one of the biggest mistakes that reps are making is relying on the companies, which we talk about it being the wild, wild west, and we're going to get into the business owner side of it later. But a lot of these business owners, they have good intentions, but they don't have systems, and they don't have systems for training, especially training formally. There's a lot of ride-along shadow training out there, which doesn't work, and we'll get into that too. Right. So I think one of the biggest mistakes that reps are making is not taking formal training into their own hands, one. And now we can break that down even further. So there's a lot of more technical mistakes that reps make. I think one is poor time management. For example, knocking at the wrong times. I get emails from people who go, Becca, I knock from 9 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night. I'm out there all day, right? A 9 to 5 knocking doors. And I only talk to 4 people. Like, I'm burning myself out, yada. And I go, when do people work? Dolly Parton has a song about it. Do you know it? 9 to 5. Okay. It's in 9 to 5. I can't sing it because I can't remember the tune. I would if I could. But it's like, okay, so time management. You could knock for 1 hour 3 nights a week from 6 to 7 and probably line up 3 to 5 appointments in each of those and have 15 appointments lined up by the end of the day. Or you could knock 9 to 5, 5 days a week, which is a 40-hour work week, and maybe talk to 15 people, right? So, but again, these guys aren't taught this stuff. We think it's a lot of us are like common sense, but they don't know, okay?
Right.
Poor time management, you can, we'll get into the hustle myth also. I think poor time management is like a really, really big one, but mostly not seeking out or receiving formal training. That covers so many of the underlying issues that roof salesmen run into. They just need to know what to say. I mean, that's as simple as it boils down to. What do you say at the door? What do you say when a customer gives you this objection or that objection? What do you say at the kitchen table? And then on an adjuster meeting, what do you say? That's it. And if you know those things, you rinse and repeat it over and over, you win.
Right. Well, perfect. And maybe that's a great segue into kind of unpacking each of those parts and just, giving some flavor, adding some tips, adding some value in terms of, so part number one, what do you say at the door? What are some of the things that you teach roofers all the time with door presentation?
So let's talk about first what most people are saying at the door, because it's crap. Okay. So most of the time people are going out with one pitch and they think if I just knock enough doors and I say this, I'm going to get some. And that's true, right? You are going to get some. But most people's pitch sounds something like this. Knock, knock, knock. Hi, I'm Brian with ABC Roofing. We're a local contracting company that's been around since 1995, and there was a storm that happened, blah, blah, blah. Would you like a free inspection on your roof? So many things have gone wrong with that pitch already. One, I never teach introducing yourself or your company name. Why? You only have 3 seconds to get somebody's attention, right? I think that's what they say. And if you're wasting that with information that is not creating interest or relevancy in the reason you're at the door, you already lose. And by the way, when I say something like, hi, I'm Brian with ABC Roofing. We've been around since 1995. What do I sound like? I sound like a telemarketer. Immediately the wall goes up, right? No, thanks, not interested. So the next thing is people ask a lot of yes or no questions. They say, would you like a free inspection? Have you had a free inspection, right? So that's a huge no-no, and they teach that in sales across the board. You never really want to ask yes or no questions because no is more convenient to say, okay? Right. It's just easier to say no. It means no commitment. I don't have to deal with anything. Right. Even if I don't even know what you're offering me yet, no thanks is just easier to say than, yes, tell me more. I don't have anything better to do, even though I was just watching TikTok videos for 45 minutes on my porch, okay? So what does a good pitch sound like? Well, the first thing I want to say is there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all door pitch. And here's what I mean. In storm restoration, circumstantially, there are things that make a pitch relevant or less relevant. So what I mean by that is when you are knocking around a hailstorm, if a storm happened 10 days ago, you're going to say something totally different than if the storm happened 10 months ago. Any guesses why? I'll pick your brain. Can you think of a reason? Right.
Timing.
Well, you're going to have different objections, right?
Right.
10 months ago, if somebody thought in their mind with the limited information that they have, if they were to think, well, if I had damage, I think I'd know by now, my ceiling would have caved in, right? So there's less relevancy. You're going to have different objections. Maybe they don't even remember the storm, right? They think they're good. They're not interested. They don't have damage. But if it happened 10 days ago, well, now we have a bunch of different stuff going on. You're probably one of 8 roofers that's knocked on their door in the last couple days. The storm's fresh in their mind and there's relevancy there. There's more belief. Another one would be like if you're let's say you're in an area where there was baseball sized hail that blew through the decking, like in Houston, a couple of years ago, right? Well, that's going to be a different door pitch than if it was quarter sized at 4:00 in the morning and people didn't even really know about it, right? Or it's going to be a different pitch if you're the 10th person to knock on the door or if you're the first person to knock in the door in that neighborhood, okay? So those are different circumstances that are going to determine what you should be saying because your door pitch is actually going to cover and prevent as many objections as humanly possible before they come up. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I'm teaching people to go, okay, here's the situation at hand. What are people likely to object with? And how do I incorporate that into my door pitch so that they don't give me those objections? And I'm giving them enough information to be interested before I close them on the inspection, right?
Right.
The other mistake I think people make with their door pitches is they try to sell at the door. Remember, like one thing that I'd love everyone to take away from this moment is your only goal at the door is just to get on the roof, is just to get an inspection lined up, whether that's an appointment or you're getting on there right now. It's just to get an appointment. It's not to inform them that they might qualify for a free roof. Guess what? That sounds like a scam too. We want to just get to the next step, okay? So the knock on the door is really, the pitch is just to get them to agree to set up an inspection with you for 4 o'clock the next day. And then from there, then we go to the next step. All right. So I want to lay that foundation first, because just giving a door pitch, it's going to be great and you can use that sometimes, but I have really broken door knocking down into like a science. And it's more than just saying, oh, here's the pitch that works. It's here's a bunch of pitches that work. Here's why. And then here's how you use them. Does that make sense?
Right. And do you even have, in a sense, are you able to test, like, basically opening lines versus sort of like 40 seconds into the pitch? Have you been able to see how these different things can be almost like split tested? Where have you tried out 10 different opening lines and seen the results? And if so, what have you found some of like kind of the best openers? I mean, what catches people's attention right away?
So what I found was I just got in my own head. So when I was knocking doors, I just started thinking like, okay, how do people feel? Because remember, we're all humans. It's not like the customer is this wild animal. We need to figure out what does the wild customer, how do they behave? They're a human being just like me.
Right.
So I was thinking, okay, if it was me on the porch and somebody knocked on my door, what's the first thing that I think and feel? Well, I probably feel annoyed, right? Nobody likes a door knocker, but that's just part of marketing. Like that's just a way to market. And so what I would think is, all right, if my customer's annoyed that I'm here and they hate people knocking on their doors, I also hate knocking on doors. Why don't I just lead with that? And so what I started doing was I changed everything about my demeanor. Sometimes salespeople think they have to be like uber enthusiastic, like kill them with kindness. Hey, like really chipper and like they come to the door with all this sunshine energy. And it's already annoying because your customer's already annoyed that you're here. So killing them with kindness just doesn't work when you don't have any rapport quite yet. So I started changing my entire demeanor, which honestly was a reflection of how I felt. It was 100 degrees. I was sweating my balls off, going around knocking people's doors, right? In Pennsylvania, with Iowa plates on my car. This was already an uphill battle to begin with. But I started realizing, I was like, if I just act bored, hot, sweaty, tired, uninterested, and I hate knocking their door more than they hate me knocking on their door, I might actually have something here. And actually, if you remember Dane Cook's skit, he was talking about the elevator scene. Do you remember that skit where he's like, I was in the elevator and this guy comes into the elevator and he is just pissed off. He's like yelling and just like banging his fist on the wall. And I'm like, the only survival technique I could think of was be angrier than this guy. That's going to calm him down. And so I started remembering that. I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. So when I'd like knock on the door and like lean against, if they had a porch, I'd like lean on the post and just act so bored. And they'd answer and they'd be like, can I help you? And I'd go, yeah, I'm really sorry to knock on your door. I hate knocking on people's doors, but do you guys happen to know John and Kim on the corner? Yes or no, it didn't matter. Well, long story short, that hailstorm we had on April 3rd? I just got down doing an inspection on their roof. Surprisingly, we had quite a bit of damage up there. I took some pictures, swipe, and they've got quite a bit of damage on their roof and gutters. I'm assuming if their house had damage, most of these houses in this neighborhood are roughly the same age, so a lot of the houses probably do. Yours might not, but it's better safe than sorry. I'm doing some free inspections for the neighbors here on Thursday and Friday. I could pop by after the Johnsons at 4, or I could do 6:30. What works better for you guys? And so the ice was broken when I was like, I hate knocking on people's doors and I'm so sorry to do it to you.
Yeah.
Because I was sincere, right? I want to interject something. Most people do this. Sorry to bother you, but I'm Brian with ABC Roofing. You don't sound sorry, Brian. Brian, you're not sorry, right?
Right.
So I really just like took a pause, and that little icebreaker there, I usually use that with every single door pitch. And then of course I adjust the door pitch accordingly. and I ask a series of questions. And some people might be like, well, that just sounds too long. That took you like 90 seconds just to say that. Yes, it did. But I engaged the customer the whole time. I got them to say yes, 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 give them a bunch of information. I was on your neighbor's roof. I name dropped. They trusted me to have me over. I surprisingly found damage, meaning I didn't think there was damage either. Just like you probably don't think there's damage, but surprise, there was some. Showed some pictures, more proof. I asked you to, I'm going to be back here anyway. So do you see all the things I did there? I handled a bunch of objections before they came up. And then by the time I asked the question, they might still be unclear about exactly what I'm doing, but that's okay. Because what I normally get the response of is, wait, so what is this? And that's perfect, because now they're asking you for more information.
Right. There's some amazing things going on there as well. And you kind of highlighted them, but in that script, there's number one, I love that you lead with the name of the neighbor. I mean, that's a huge one to immediately build trust and credibility. And I love how you even said, whether or not they know the Johnsons on the corner, doesn't matter. I just use their name. Now they know them, right? And then the second thing that I love that you did as well is, a sales tactic that's obviously commonly taught, which is, again, not ending in a yes or no question, but rather heard a sales guy who's actually on the podcast just recently, as he sort of put it, he's like, in a sense, you got to treat your customers like children. He's like, I don't mean that in a way that's demeaning. I mean in the way that when you have a child in front of you and you're presenting an option, you don't necessarily say a yes or no, ending to a question where the child can say, yes, absolutely, or no, I don't want it. You present them with, here's the choice A, here's the choice B.
Right.
And now their mind has been only given two choices.
Right.
And it's funny, I was actually on vacation recently and I tested this out on my brother-in-law, who's like probably 15 years old. Can't even remember what it was, but I was trying to sort of trick him into doing something. And I just gave him two options that he could choose. And of course, the other option was for him to just say, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But that wasn't an option presented. So therefore, I got him to go to the car and get me something, but I mean, this is just how our mind works. It's how it processes information and questions and things like that. So again, the name drop, kind of a referral-based marketing in a sense, and referral-based sales. And then two, giving them two options to choose from. And then continually name dropping is something I've never really heard before in between. So do you want to do it after the Johnsons at 4?
Yes.
Or do you want to do, after 2? Brilliant. Totally brilliant. So great there. One thing I think maybe next in the process, so that's sort of the first phase. We get to the door-to-door. What happens next in terms of the customer interaction? And where do you think, most roofers, like where's the next place to go? Where's the best information for most roofing sales reps where they're kind of missing the mark, they're confused, they've been doing it wrong? What's next?
So of course, that's a very wide open question, right? There's a bunch of things that I could talk about, but the next thing that came to mind that I wanted to mention was, I think that the step after that, a lot of, and honestly, it's because business owners are teaching it, and I think it's a misguided strategy, is trying to getting on the roof right now. They're knocking the door and trying to get on the roof today, right now. And there's a few reasons why I teach not doing inspections on the spot. And here's a couple. First of all, if you're outdoor knocking, your time, your lead generation is actually more valuable than getting on this one roof right now. Let's say that you have 1 hour on a Tuesday evening, prime knocking time, 6 to 7 p.m., let's say. Right. And you knock on the first door and you talk to that person and you're trying to get on the roof. Let's even say that they do let you get on the roof. You get up on the roof, you do an inspection, you come down and, so the inspection takes you 15 minutes or so. You're taking pictures, you come down, you sit down with the customer for 25 minutes, you do an appointment. And let's say that either they don't sign or they do sign, but then it doesn't get approved later or whatever. You spent that hour when you could have knocked doors for that hour and lined up 5 inspections for the rest of the roof or rest of the neighborhood there. You just got on one person's roof, right? Right. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is, if you knock on somebody's door and you ask them if you can get on their roof right now, what are the odds that you caught them just, sure? People are like, but they're home. Yes, they answered their door, but they could be making hamburger helper for their 4-year-old. They could be doing their taxes inside. They might be in the middle of Game of Thrones. They were about to get laid. We don't know. They had a bad day. They're trying to drink a whole bottle of rosé. We don't know. Right. So if you're asking, can I get on your roof right now? that might be a no, but the no wasn't no, not ever, but you asked them, can I get on your roof right now? And they're just like, you literally just came to my house and now you just want to get on my roof 5 seconds later.
Right.
And let's even say that they do let you get on their roof right away. You just knocked on their door. They just saw your face for the first time. They know nothing about you. There's no report. And then 15 minutes later, you're going to come down, ask to come in their house, and then try to get them to sign a contract.
Right.
You don't have a chance to build rapport or trust. Whereas if you set an appointment time, first, you're not getting a yes or no for getting on the roof. You get them to choose a time. Does 2 or 4 work better for you tomorrow? You come over. If they say 4 p.m. and you show up at 4 p.m., you did what you said you were going to do. So there's some integrity and trust there. There's rapport because now they've met you before. They met you yesterday. Here you are again today.
Right.
And now, if they had a chance to go and look you up online or something too, maybe there's some extra trust built there too. But now when you go and you have them sign a contract, your people have reported back to me so many times, my closing ratio has increased and my contract retention has increased. Fewer cancellations doing it this way. Right. I have shifted so many people into being believers about that strategy, not to do appointments on the spot.
Right. I mean, it makes great sense. And I won't kind of reiterate that, but I mean, that's a ton of value obviously unpacked right there. And it's kind of interesting to me. I don't know truly like in and out, without a shadow of a doubt, kind of the history behind roofing sales. Like I'm talking about like decades, like through the decades, the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years, kind of roofing sales tactics.
Yeah.
But it seems that in many ways, this idea of I'm going to go knock on somebody's door and I'm going to get up on their roof today is in some sense a very traditional sales tactic. And what I mean by that is maybe also a little outdated. In other words, if you dropped in, roofing aside, if you dropped in because you were quote unquote, I was in the neighborhood, right? If you're in the neighborhood and you drop by somebody's house maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago, that door actually probably been opened with a lot less sort of skepticism and concern and anxiety and fear of like why somebody is knocking on their door at 7 p.m., as dusk is starting to, so now shift to today. I mean, when people knock on our door, there's this I love this comedian, Sebastian Maniscalco. And he does this skit where he's talking about like, he said, when I was a kid, people used to drop by, they'd knock on the door. We'd be in the middle of like watching a show or listening to the radio. We'd hear the door. We'd all shoot up. We'd skid to the front door, in our socks. Come on in. We got coffee. We got donuts, all this different stuff. He's like, now people knock on your door, it's like, everybody get down.
You're like, shut the lights off.
Exactly. We're not home.
Well, you think about, when the internet came out and there was AOL and you had your email, we opened every single chain email that we received because it was new, right?
Right.
And so, part of that goes hand in hand with what we're talking about here. But I think the underlying issue is there's this attitude of, gosh, I almost want to call it scarcity, but there's this attitude of like, if you don't get them today, someone else is going to get them. And yes, occasionally, perhaps, maybe, if you set the appointment for tomorrow, 24 hours later, maybe somebody comes in 45 minutes before you and scoops them up. But I've not found that to be the case. And I think that people have this mentality that like, there's just not enough roofs to go around and you've got to get out there. And yes, you do have to get out there, but there are more effective ways of getting out there and harvesting and collecting your leads than trying to get everybody to sign on the spot right now, right here. Like it's more about relationship building and understanding that rapport and trust building is going to increase your company's overall success rate on closing and your reputation, all of that. And remember also, like roofing companies, this is what I remind people. If you are in an area that has 100,000 homes that were affected by a hurricane or hailstorm or whatever, and you're a company that's trying to do $5 million a year, that's only 500 roofs that you need. That's one subdivision in a neighborhood. So don't stress so hard, right? It's not like there's enough roofs to go around. And so if you take an extra second to not be so turn them and burn them, hustle, burn them like that, you're going to get better results in a more relaxed manner and your customer experience is going to improve.
Right. Well, even your canvassing strategy or prospecting strategy speaks to that, right? You in your example, I mean, the hardest prospect that you have to make is the very first one.
Yes.
Quote unquote, once you get the Johnsons, now you have them to name drop. And once you get the Johnsons and the Smiths, now you have both of them to name drop, and on, and it just creates a snowball effect. Trucks are in the neighborhood, and that's like kind of that neighborhood takeover, right? That can really happen. So excellent there. We talked about kind of at the door strategy, looking to book the appointment, not in the inspection, not for right now while I'm on your porch, but rather maybe later that day or the next day.
Yeah.
And kind of finally, it seems like maybe there's one more area in which roofers often have a lot of mistakes, maybe seem to have kind of outdated practices. And so let's maybe transition a little bit into like the kitchen table, right? So the close, the inspection and the close. What's happening there? What are the mistakes that many roofing sales reps are making?
So this can be this can all be, but I'll pick the one thing that's missing from most people's door or closing presentation that opens up all kinds of problems. It opens up things for bid collecting, eating the deductible, all of that, which is not clearly explaining to the customer, probably because the rep doesn't understand it fully either, the process of collecting recoverable depreciation. So people constantly are emailing me and saying, I'm losing like other bids. People want me to give them a price instead of showing them the exact amount. They won't show me their cards. They got their insurance paperwork, but they won't show me what the adjuster paid for, or they're asking me to pay their deductible and I'm telling them it's fraud and none of this is working. How do I overcome these objections? And I'm like, well, you missed your opportunity to prevent the objection in your sales pitch. Right. And that's something that I need, like contractors and salespeople need to understand is a lot of the issues they're dealing with is because the source is they're dropping the ball in their actual sales presentation. All of the problems that are floating out here that they're having after they've gotten a contract signed is because they didn't do a good enough job during the sales presentation to educate their customer. So what do I mean by that? Well, depreciation clears up, the proper explanation of it prevents all those objections because it helps people see how the money works. So here's what I like to tell people. For example, what they used to do, what the insurance company used to do is State Farm would come out and say, okay, Mrs. Jones, yes, you've got damage to your roof and it's going to be $10,000 total to replace it, right? You have $1,000 deductible. That's the portion you're responsible for, right? And we pay for anything above and beyond that $1,000. And they used to write one check for $9,000 and say, here you go fix your roof. What do you think some people did with a big fat check for $9,000? New car,
yep.
right? Mrs. Jones, I don't remember you being that chesty before, right? So, or they would go, sweet, we have a check for $9,000. We need a new roof. Let's have Uncle Joe come over with his buddies on a Saturday afternoon drinking Coors Light, and we'll pay them $7,000 or $6,000, right? And then we'll save the rest of the money and we won't pay our deductible. So people got away with that for a really long time, but eventually the insurance companies were like, all right, we're not in the business of buying people new hot tubs and motorcycles. Like, what's a way that we can protect ourselves from doing this? So they started using Xactimate. They started putting mortgage companies on the check. So the mortgage company has to sign off to make sure the work is done. But they also started withholding depreciation. So this is where it gets tricky, and it actually gets good because it really benefits the contractor to know this, because now they can charge top dollar and collect it because I'll get into that in a second. So let's say that the claim is still $10,000, right? State Farm says, yes, you have damage, Mrs. Jones. It's still $10,000 to replace it. You still only pay $1,000 out of your pocket for the deductible. We're still willing to pay $9,000, but instead of writing one check for that, we split it into two. We're going to give you one check up front, the ACV, the actual cash value, which is as your roof is right now and the age and the condition it is, that's what it's worth. Let's say it's $6,000. So here's $6,000. Go get started. We are withholding $3,000 in depreciation until the roof is done. And if you can prove to us that it's done afterward, it's recoverable depreciation, but you have to send an invoice. So now what happens? Well, if Mrs. Jones goes, cool, we're getting $9,000 from the insurance company, let's still have Uncle Joe or Joe Blow or, two chucks in a truck or whatever come over and do the roof. And they say, yeah, we can do it for $7,000. Mrs. Jones thinks, sweet, we're going to pocket $3,000. But what would happen is, unless you provide fraudulent documentation, which is insurance fraud, Mrs. Jones would say, here's our invoice, we finished the roof. And State Farm looks at it and goes, oh, you got it done for $7,000. Well, We already paid you $6,000. You paid your $1,000 deductible. That's the part you owe. That's $7,000 cover the roof. Thanks for saving State Farm $3,000. You're our brand new favorite customer.
Right.
Right? Or if they go and buy a hot tub, there is no invoice. So apart from committing insurance fraud, which would be sending in a false invoice, lying and saying that you did the work, or the contractor lying and saying we charge 10 when really they charge 7.
Right.
You can't. It doesn't save anybody money. So if you don't pay the deductible, and that's why it's insurance fraud. If the contractor waives the deductible, let's say, right? What that means is they didn't charge $10,000 for the roof, they charged $9,000. But in order for the insurance company to release all the depreciation, they would have had to have charged $10,000. Right. Because the insurance company's only going to cover whatever the roof costs minus the deductible. So you can't waive a deductible. There's no such thing, right? Right. So that's a huge thing, is in the sales presentation. And I know that was like a big roundabout way to do it. I have it scripted verbatim with this perfect little chart that's so easy. I only one time in my whole life, this is not an exaggeration, one time in my whole life selling roofs did I ever have a deductible objection. And it was when I was brand new and I still didn't really know what I was doing. Once I figured out the perfect way to demonstrate, describe, and illustrate depreciation to my customers, I never got bid collector arguments. I never got deductible leading requests. You can eliminate that from your whole sales process if you know how to explain that properly.
Right. That's incredible. I mean, because, that's something I hear so much from not only storm chasers / roofing companies that are focused on insurance roof sales and things like that, but obviously also even public adjusters. I think even public adjusters alike have that struggle with clients. And even though obviously the roofing company hopefully knows the process, and the public adjuster certainly should know the process for how to collect these checks and things like that. Yeah. That doesn't mean that the homeowner understands the process.
Exactly. And Jeremy,
go ahead.
Well, I want to say I'm so glad that you said that, because the thing is, a lot of these guys, they go, yeah, but I get that. Maybe you do. But if you can't communicate it to your customer in a way that they get it,
right,
you're still shooting yourself in the foot. So again, that's why having like a formal sales script is so critical, because even if you get the information, it doesn't mean that you're being a good presenter to your customer. And if your customers are giving you those objections, you're not doing a good enough job. Like, the proof is in the pudding.
Right. Right. And this is so true, by way of analogy. I mean, it makes perfect sense, but it's almost like in sports, right? If you were going to teach somebody, you've got on your website that, it's almost like being the Michael Jordan. Maybe you are the Michael Jordan of sales. You're really good at your craft, but it doesn't necessarily, and we'll unpack this more when we talk about training and things like that. But it doesn't mean that just because you know how to do it, that when you explain to somebody, well, here's how you shoot a basketball, you sort of put it in your hand and you throw it at the rim and just swish. Well,
right. You get how to do it, but you're not doing a good job communicating it.
Right. So brilliant stuff. Are there any other things that you want to highlight in terms of maybe common problems, common sort of failures, things that roofing sales reps just aren't getting right, that stand out in your mind? Is there anything else, especially maybe as regards, I think there was one more part of the process related to insurance adjusters being up on the roof when you're doing the actual inspection. Anything there to share?
So adjuster point, yeah, absolutely. So here's the first thing. There's sometimes, I think in some areas or with some companies, like this attitude of it's us against the adjusters, right? And this creates this like tension. And I never approach it like that. There's a video I have out there called Adjusters and the Golden Rule. And I just got into, this is another human being, and they're probably dealing with a lot of jackass roofers who are coming up like pounding on their chest and demanding the sun, the moon, and the stars and being dicks and stuff like that. So I was like, I'm just going to be different, right? I'm just going to be a nice person. Like, that was honestly my strategy. So what I figured out was when I got there, like, I was super laid back, just like the door. I'm not there to get in your face and get the deal. I'm there to first just like let you feel my energy and make sure like we're cool. And sometimes adjusters would come and they'd be real cold shouldered to me at first, but then we'd just like, I'd crack some jokes and build some rapport. And I wouldn't even talk about the roof at all. Like, when we got to the property, it was just, hey, how's it going? I'd go up and shake their hand. My name's Becca. Where are you from? A lot of the times these guys are traveling from all over, they're from out of state. I'm like, are you doing the RV thing? Are you doing the extended hotel thing? And we'd chat and stuff like that. And then a few minutes in, after they start doing their thing, I always would say, like, by the way, look, I'm going to let you do your job. Like, I'm not here to, get in your face or tell you how to do your job or anything. But would you mind telling me what you're looking for? I'm still kind of new at doing this, and I've done my best assessment and I've got everything, I've got all my stuff put together, but will you mind showing me what you're looking for? And the reason I do that, even if you're not new, you should say that. Always be a student of the trade, right? Because it gives them, they feel like they have a little bit of authority, and they get to show you. Now they're actively looking for damage to show you what they're looking for.
Right.
And so my whole thing, I could go off on a tangent with my whole process, but the whole like purpose of the adjuster meeting is really just to let them do their job. And you can, in the beginning, really just focus on rapport and letting them show you stuff, and then say, hey, by the way, if you notice that they didn't find some things that you have, be like, hey, by the way, I saw a couple things over here. This is one of my favorite tricks. People always love this. I'm like, I saw a couple things I wanted to show you and just get your opinion on it. Would you mind coming over and taking a look at the shed with me? Oh yeah, sure. Come over. And I go, so what do you think about this? And I'd point at some damage, and I'd say, I couldn't say with 100% certainty that it was hail, but I also wasn't able to say with 100% certainty that it wasn't. I usually tend to like lean in favor of the insured, but like, what do you think? And I love that line, because they go, oh, I mean, I guess you're right. If you can't say for sure one way, we should lean in favor of the insured, right? So that's how I get them to say yes to things that they didn't voluntarily find or go do. Right. And then what I would do is, like, at the end, I would say, hey, by the way, I'm sure you're putting together your own Xactimate and all that. I have to do this anyway. Like, the company makes me do it. I have my line-by-line Xactimate, my Eagle View and all that. I did make a copy for you as well. But if you have like 2 minutes, do you mind just, if we can compare apples to apples? I just want to make sure I have everything that you have. And so I pose it like that, and then that allowed me to compare what I have. And so when there are line items on mine that obviously are not going to be on his, because they, how they are, they put as little as humanly possible in the claim, I have an opportunity then to bring up those line items and maybe get the adjuster on site to say yes. But if not, that's okay. I'm not there to supplement the insurance claim or argue with the field adjuster at all. My whole point with the field adjuster is I just want them to say yes to the roof. I know the supplementing game takes place in the back end after he leaves with the desk adjuster. It's a totally different person. Right. So my approach with the field adjuster, to put that all in a nutshell, is build rapport, be cool, let him do his job, just make sure the roof gets approved, period. And then just show him things that you found in a non-combative manner. Like, that's it, right?
Right. I think that's one of the biggest points that I'll just kind of highlight. Makes great sense. And it's basically step number one, which is build rapport. I honestly just feel like from what I've heard a lot is that step is just missed. And building rapport takes place in a lot of different, comes in different shapes and sizes. So for example, maybe building rapport is, hey, how you doing today? Where are you from? Or are you doing like the trailer thing? Or you out of town, where you staying? How's it going? I mean, yeah, so that's all part of building rapport. But another thing as well that I've heard is, a lot of, I feel like roofers will come and they'll already be setting up like the scene. They've already chalked everything out. They've already marked it. And insurance, it's basically like coming into somebody's house, I feel like, and setting their dinner table for them. And they might come in and go, well, I kind of appreciate that you
I'm
just
on the Atkins diet.
but that's not how I set my table. And so it's really frustrating because now I'm having to rearrange the table, and it just kind of bothers you and irks you that somebody already is presuming that they know how to do your job. Whereas you're taking an approach that positions them as one, being flattered that you appreciate their opinion and insight. And as a result, also gives them an opportunity to show that they're an expert to you. Right. Which just makes them, in a sense, kind of trust you all the more and appreciate, their time up on the roof and build rapport. So makes great sense. So I think this is a good opportunity, though. Let's transition into, we've unpacked a ton of stuff, obviously, for roofing sales reps. Yeah. Now let's talk to roofing business owners. Basically, at the end of the day, one of the biggest things I think that you can help unpack, again, is just what are the common challenges? What are the common problems that many roofing business owners are facing? What are those common mistakes that they might be making? when it comes to, in particular, I think where we'll focus ourselves today is in building and scaling their business. So
Yeah.
I know you have a ton to add on supplementing specifically and a ton to add on X, Y, and Z specifically, but at a little bit of a higher level to start at least, again, some of those common problems and challenges that most roofing business owners are facing today when it comes to building, growing, and scaling their business.
So when I first started creating Roof Sales Master, I mentioned I'd created that course, the Advanced Sales and Supplement Training Program, but it was completely from my perspective as an individual salesperson. So I wasn't even thinking in the context of like, what's it like to be a bit, like in my head, oh, the business owners have it figured out. It's the reps who are struggling, right? Which was totally misguided, but that was just that was what I had felt at the time because I was a sales rep. And so when I started doing my beta program, which I had taken on, I think like 8 contractors from around the country to go through my program first, made sure it worked, but also to figure out like, what is it that you guys need? And what I found was, surprisingly, like I was expecting like go-getter, badass salespeople like me to come to the program. And I had a couple of salespeople, but primarily it was business owners. And they were like, Becca, this supplementing stuff is great and we love it, but we need a way to train and retain salespeople. Like we need help hiring, training, and retaining. And I was like, oh, right. Oh, okay. And like that was the pain point over and over and over. People loved the supplement stuff, but they're like, we need salesmen. And so as I dug deeper into seeing like, okay, well, what's going on with everybody? I realized that people have not been able to scale their businesses, right? Scaling. And when we talk about scaling, it means you have a repeatable process that works and it's duplicatable. So if I know that this system works once and it's repeatable, I can turn it on and off. That means if I can get one result out of it, I should be able to get that same result 1, 10, 20, 100, or 1,000 times because the system is duplicatable, it's scalable, right? Well, business owners have been flying by the seat of their pants since the beginning of time in the roof sales industry. Like roof sales these businesses are run by people who like got recruited by some guy who was like, hey, come sell roofs. You can make 6 figures in 6 months and like come across country and chase storms. And it's true, but it's these one-off people that just by the grace of God, because of their work ethic or they didn't have any other options and failure was not an option, they stuck it out and they figured out how to sell roofs and make it work. And then those people broke off and started a business. And that's the same method they have for hiring is, hey, they're at a restaurant and they find a good server that they like. And they're like, you want to make some real money, come with me. And then they get that person to quit their job and come and do this crazy roof sales thing with 0 training. And then they just say, well, you're going to figure it out. It's a numbers game. I figured it out too. It's not that hard. So this whole like recruiting process or this training process in our industry, you can't even call it a process or training. It's been throw shit at the wall and just see what sticks, and nothing has been repeatable.
Right.
And so why this is a huge problem is, one, it's terrible for the salespeople, right? You're talking about people who are coming to you because they need to make a living, and they come and they say, okay, I'm going to take a chance with your crazy roof sales thing. And they show up and you're not giving them the proper tools that they need to succeed. And they go out there and 90% of the time they end up fizzling out, right? It's a revolving door. I think the retention rate is like less than 5% or something.
Right.
That's terrible. And it sucks for the business owner because the business owner wants to keep salespeople, but if their attitude is, well, you're either cut out for the sales job or you're not, which is just such a stupid way to look at it. I really don't believe in that. Then they're just losing candidates all the time, people who could be really good at this job if we just gave them the formal training for it, right? And so what I always talk about, and people hear me use this analogy all the time, but I talk about it like a cake recipe. And I always say, look, roof sales is not rocket science, okay? You do not need to have a Harvard degree in marketing to make 6 figures selling roofs, okay? But it's simple in the same way that baking a cake is simple. It's not rocket science to bake a cake, okay? But I don't care how smart you are. If I pluck you out of a crowd and I stick you in my kitchen and I go, you've eaten cake before, right? And they're like, yeah, I've had birthdays. Okay, and they probably made one before in the past too. Cool, all right. Well, there's my fridge, there's eggs and there's milk and stuff in there. And then there's my pantry, there's oil and flour and all that jazz. And then here's my oven. make me a cake. Hey, by the way, actually, you're going to make cakes for a living and we're running a bakery. Go get them, Tiger. You'll figure it out. It's a numbers game. And then I leave them there with ingredients, no directions. And they're just like,
Right.
what's going to happen? Right? You don't need to be Cleopatra. You don't need to be Miss Cleo to like guess what's going to happen. You're going to have a lot of wasted ingredients, very frustrated people. And so you're burning through ingredients, AKA money, morale, energy and time. And then eventually the business owner just goes, well, I guess this person's just not cut out to be a baker, and gives up on them. Or the person decides, well, baking a cake is just too hard, I guess, and they quit.
Right.
Neither of those is true. The cake's not hard, and the person doesn't have to be a born baker. What if they need? Any guesses?
Right.
What do they need?
Training.
A recipe.
Right.
Right? So you can take a 5th grader and stick them in the kitchen and go, here's a Betty Crocker box of bake mix. Right. There's 3 freaking steps on the back. It's like add 2 cups of water, add 3 eggs, add half a cup of oil, mix, bake at 350 for 30 minutes. Done. Ding. Now you have a cake. And you can just repeat that over and over and over and over again, and you can run a bakery.
Right. Right. Brilliant. Yeah.
Right.
I think you had another point maybe to add to that.
Well, to segue that into how that applies to the roof sales stuff, yes, roof sales has more moving parts than a Betty Crocker funfetti cake mix.
Right.
But roof sales is so simple. Anybody that has sold anything in their lives knows that selling insurance restoration is like, you can almost not call it sales. We're selling a virtually free product. People get a extreme makeover on their house for 90% off, right? There's already need created because hail hit their roof. Insurance pays for it. When you talk about direct sales, there are people who go around knocking doors, door to door, selling $2,000 vacuum cleaners to people who already have vacuum cleaners. That's hard sales. Right. Okay. So when we're talking about storm restoration, it's so simple to do. All we have to do is give these salespeople the scripts. Remember when I said I kept just saying, just tell me what to say and I can do it. That's what we have to do to these guys. But these business owners, they think they're telling people what to say, but they're going, here, ride around with me for a while. And they're like, on 4 hours of sleep and with a dip in their lip, like going around. It's like, hey, just listen to me and record it on your phone and then you'll know how to do it. That's not how it works. That's not formal sales training. And so what I want business owners and roofing contractors to help shift their perspective into is, what would it look like if this was literally any other business? What if I was running an insurance sale? What if I went, take yourself out of it? What if you weren't running the business? What if you went and applied to another business? If you went to apply to go sell life insurance, you'd get trained. They'd probably send you to Santa Barbara for 30 days and you'd go to this big training and they would give you books and DVDs and you'd take a test and you'd have a coach or a mentor and all that. And then they'd send you it, right? Right. If you go to any other job, there's formal training. So for us to look at the roof business as if it's something different from that is just ludicrous. Right. Right.
Right. Yeah, that's such a great point. And it's interesting for me, from my perspective, I mean, there are so many industries like this, but in terms of retention, so you mentioned that, you're constantly helping business owners, one, to find, i.e. recruit the talent, but then to retain it as well. Yes. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people who are out there who are pretty good at recruiting. They're pretty good at getting people to come on board, convince them, hey, you can make a lot of money. The question is, can they retain? Because number one, in terms of that investment, the perspective that I have in a sense of running a marketing company is that with clients, I mean, it is basically a simple big picture math. Like, it's as simple as, if in the first 30 to 60 to especially 90 days, we can show results / build trust and rapport and a great relationship with the client, I have great confidence that that relationship is going to last for 6, 12, 24, 36 months, or even longer. Like years, right. Will it last if in the first 90 days we establish a great system with them and great rapport.
Yes.
Retention, right? And so the same thing is true in training, that, these business owners may be spending a lot of money or time or both recruiting, but the question is, are they retaining? And the reason they're probably not retaining is because people are getting burnt out because there's no training. And it's just like this vicious cycle of turn and burn, turn and burn, turn and burn. And I'm sure you've seen that a lot. Does that stand true?
Oh yeah. So there's a big message I'd love to share about retention. So in business owners' minds, they think that retention, like the sole variable is finding the right person. So there's this like fantasy out there that if they just find the right person, that person is going to stick around. So they think retention is, I need to just locate these motivated, like hungry individuals, and then they're the ones that are going to stay. So then they come to me with the wrong problem. The symptom is I'm not retaining people, but they think it's the person that they're hiring. And I'm not taking away, of course, there are certain people who are more motivated than others, yada, yada, yada. Yes, I'm not completely taking away from that. But most of the time, the problem is poor retention is a result of two things. One, people are not enjoying the process. They're not having a good time, and they're not making any money. Right. And what that's a lack of, if they're not having a good time and they're not making money, it's because they haven't been trained how to do the job. Because remember, let's go back to, it's not rocket science, right?
Right.
So if the job is not rocket science and we formally teach them so that they can actually take it and run and go with it, they're not going to have a bad time, because they're going to go out with their door pitches and their objection handling techniques and their sales pitch, and it's going to work. And they're going to go, oh my God, I have deals, right? And they're going to have a good time. And because it's working and they're having a good time, they're going to be making money quickly and easily, right?
Right.
So there's this idea in business owners' heads, well, retention is just, I need to find the right people, or there's just nobody out there that's motivated. Everybody's lazy. Nobody wants to knock doors. Well, yes, not everybody wants to knock doors, but if somebody has showed up to training, they've already said, yes, I get that there's door knocking and I'm willing to do it. Retention takes place by giving them the tools necessary to quickly actually be able to become competent at this job. So we can't, if you're a business owner and your strategy is, we'll let them do ride-along training and we'll give them bits and pieces here and there, and there's no formal training, in over a month to 6 weeks, hopefully they figure it out, you're killing your potential. Even the best people who could really crush it at this job are falling off the map because you're just not giving them the tools that they need, right? It's not about finding the right people, it's about developing people.
Right. That makes great sense. And I think, again, just kind of as a segue to continue to unpack maybe some of the common problems and challenges that business owners are facing. So first one that you've unpacked really well is basically this idea of recruiting and retention. What are some of the other big problems or challenges that business owners in the roofing space are facing when it comes to, again, growing or scaling their business? So beyond recruiting, what are some of the other big challenges that you've seen?
I think one problem is delegation. Like a lot of contractors just aren't delegating as much. Like, and I get it. I'm a control freak myself. I'm super type A. Right. Like it's me and one other person over here. I've got my assistant. My dog has things. He busted in. I don't even know how he got in here. But so I think that first, the business owners are trying to wear all the hats. And whether that's a matter of they don't know how to hire other people or they don't trust other people to do certain parts of the job. But I talk about, like, they're running it like the Cheesecake Factory. And at the Cheesecake Factory, you can get anything on the menu, right? Have you ever eaten there, Jeremy?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
The menu is like a book, and it's like,
I hate menus like that.
And you can find lasagna, fajitas, steak, paella. There's probably sushi rolls on there. There's everything on the menu. Right. But if you want a really good steak, are you going to go to Cheesecake Factory?
Right.
No. Yeah, they do steak, but do they do it really, really well? No, you're going to go to Ruth's Chris if you want a good ass steak, right?
Right.
So if you're a business owner and you're running your business like the Cheesecake Factory, you're kind of trying to do it all yourself. Right. So you're trying to be the supplementer, the production manager, the sales trainer, the secretary, the administrator, and everything else in between. And you are C+ at all of it. When really the best, like maybe in your head, if you're a business owner, think about the things you actually want to do. Timothy Farris talks about this all the time. He goes, what are the things you actually enjoy doing? Delegate everything else to other people, hire them out. Because once you pick your role, and maybe you love like the sales training aspect, or maybe you just being like the 30,000 foot view general manager, making sure everything's running smoothly, pick that, kick ass at it at an A+ level. And now You hire other people who this person loves supplementing. Maybe you hate getting on the phone with Allstate. You just hate it, right? Your blood pressure is through the moon, right?
Right.
And so take this person who loves the arguing and they're like, I love it. Put me in, coach, right?
Right.
Now that person can do their job at an A+ level. Now you have a production manager. He can do that at an A+ level. So now you have these people who are operating your business not like a cheesecake factory. You've got Ruth's Chris over here, and you've got Kai Sushi over here, and you've got, you have Macaroni Girl right here on the Italian, and everybody's kicking ass at that. Now the whole business is elevated.
Right.
So I think putting people in place, delegating, and making sure everybody is doing one role, but they're doing it really, really well, that's something that's going to help people transform their businesses as well.
Right. It's interesting. I feel like I had a friend the other day ask me, we were just kind of talking about business owners in general, just across the board. And his perspective was, yeah, I've talked to a lot of business owners recently, and it seems like many of them really struggle with delegating. And then he listed the very common reason, which most people I feel like point to, which is because maybe they like to control the process. They're quote unquote control freaks.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to hear your perspective, because for me, I actually don't think that is the reason that most business owners don't delegate. I don't think that the number one reason is because they're control freaks. I think the bigger reason, the more common one that I've seen, is that they actually don't know how to delegate. I mean, it truly is like an art and a science.
Yeah.
To know how to delegate well. Like, what does that mean? What should you delegate? What should you delegate first? And so, one, I'm interested, do you think that that's true, that perspective? But two, if you do think, yeah, that actually has a lot of merit. I've heard that quite a bit, that people just don't really understand how to delegate. Yeah. I would love to know as well from you, what are some of the things that you advise roofing business owners on delegating first? What are some of the most, so you mentioned one, which is obviously delegate the things you don't like to do. Right. But beyond that, do you even see sort of production versus sales? And obviously that depends on who the business owner is and what they like to do, but just structurally within a company, what do you recommend delegating, and how do you delegate?
So the first question that I would ask, if you're a business owner, ask yourself, what is my time best spent doing, right? Like where am I the most useful and effective? Answers are probably not going to fall into accounting, answering emails, doing administrative work, filing permits, ordering paper for the printer. Like those are easy things to go, okay. Like for example, most people have no problem or having a secretary, right? So if you could think of every job being like an administrator, it's like, okay, so there's like everyday due diligence tasks that an administrator or secretary can handle. Those things take up a full day of work. But if you're a business owner trying to run a company, which means recruiting, driving sales, closing customers, training people, you can't be sitting on the computer emailing back RSG today. You can't be getting in QuickBooks and doing that right now. Like, have somebody else do that, right? So the other things would be, in terms of how to delegate, that's an interesting question. And I guess the first few things that come to mind is maybe there's almost a sense of, this is from my personal personality type, but for me, sometimes I feel guilty delegating. Like I don't want to ask other people to do things for me, but remember, you're paying that person to do their job, and like, let them feel useful. Remember that when you give people responsibility and you trust them with it, you're actually improving their morale. Like they feel important and good and useful that you're trusting them with that task. And yes, maybe, Timothy Farris talks about this too. He says, you might, in your head, you might say, well, nobody can do this as well as I can, and that's why I'm just going to do it myself, or I want to do it myself. Maybe that's true. Maybe the person you hire to do the production manager stuff does it 20% slower than you do. And maybe they do make, 10% more mistakes than you do, but you allowing that person to take 4 hours off of your plate every single day is worth those tiny mistakes. And when they arise, you can address them in the weekly meeting, right? And now that person's not going to make those same mistakes again. So remember, even if you have 5 people below you that are operating this much below your operating level, you are now freed up with 5 roles that you no longer have to do every single day.
Right.
So you can spend your time where it's best spent, right? So definitely delegate, like choose the role that you want to be. Obviously, you know, everybody knows you have a production manager. Okay. That's the person that's going to order materials, schedule builds, deal with, you know, the relationships with the suppliers, deal with the crews and the subcontractors and stuff like that. An administrator, they do your bookkeeping and accounting and answering messages and emails and all that stuff. I would recommend having an in-house supplementer. That person is trained like a badass on Xactimate and supplementing. So they're doing all the Xactimates, they're corresponding with the adjusters, negotiating claims, maybe dealing with, you know, also the administrator should be dealing with mortgage checks. I'd like to slip that in there because that's something that people need to follow up on. That takes a lot of time, right? And then I'd recommend having a sales manager. That's the person that runs interviews, trainings, and sales meetings and just drives sales, keeps everybody motivated, inspired, runs trainings every single week, right? And then you have a general manager. And the general manager is just, maybe that's you if you're the business owner. You're just making sure everyone is doing their job. They have what they need. They have the resources and the tools they need to do their jobs effectively. And you're keeping the ship running, okay? Everybody needs, you know, the director of the ship. So that's what I would say.
Right. I love that idea. And it's for the bigger roofing companies maybe out there as well, who have maybe read the book Extreme Ownership. One of the things that the Navy SEAL in there talks about is that this idea that most people cannot manage maybe a team more than essentially about 5. And that's something that isn't always the case. And of course, maybe there are extraordinary people who can manage a group of 20 and et cetera, et cetera. But I think to really manage well, basically little pockets of management, like little silos basically, is a much better system than having basically, I'm the general manager and I manage 42 people. I mean, if you're thinking about it that way, unless you are of like the 1%, right? Like the very top tier in terms of you can handle that much stress well, you can handle that many responsibilities and tasks well, you're a great communicator, et cetera. You know, I think having those little core silos and teams of maybe 3 to 5 people that you manage can really also help you build and scale much faster. And so let's say, for example, you're a roofing company, you've got maybe 10 sales reps, your crews, maybe they're in-house or maybe you outsource that work, et cetera. At that point in a company, I feel like, right, you're going to have your administrator, you might have your supplementer, you'll have your sales manager, you'll have your production manager, et cetera. And at a certain point, maybe to the general manager that you trust in the company, you've got to kind of take off some of your hats and give it over to them to say, I'm only going to manage the sales team because that's what I enjoy most. And I'll coordinate and work with the general manager. So now I only have to manage 2 people.
Right.
Let them do the rest. And that is like the continued stack and tier of building the power of delegation. It is incredible how, I think another thing that keeps people from delegating is time. I mean, that is also overlooked. Like it does take time to delegate. It takes time to build trainings, to show somebody how to do something. So the immediate thing is painful because it's eating up your time.
Right. You have to stop everything you're doing to do the delegation.
Exactly. But as soon as you've done it, you gain
the payoff
all of it back. Right. You gain all of it back. But it's a brutal pain point because if you're having a busy day, it's, I'll just get it done myself. Right. And if you're having a lot of busy days over and over and over again, you don't have time to delegate. But it's actually the thing that's probably your Achilles heel in terms of being able to scale. Go ahead. I think you have, chime in one more point.
I have one more thing to say. I think that when it comes to delegation, the other thing, so I talked about clarifying roles, right? Like defining roles, whether that's sales manager, administrator, in-house supplementer, production manager, whatever. But the other thing is put together, write it down, put together, like define and clarify their individual roles and duties and responsibilities. So write it down, have a document where you're like, this is exactly what this person does. Show them, these are the things I'm counting on you to do daily, weekly, monthly, annually. Here are the results I expect. Define goals with them, right? And then, so everybody knows exactly what it is you expect out of them and they know what to do. So you're not just saying, you're the sales manager, here's your name tag, drive sales. Right. What do you want them to do? Like, you have to be a good leader as well. And so defining and clarifying those roles and what exactly you expect out of those people is really, really important. And when you do that, they have something to follow. And now, are they hitting those goals or not, right? And then you can have a meeting once a week where everybody gets together and you say, where are we with these responsibilities, expectations, and commitments? And we can see, are we hitting those? Awesome. Great job, Sarah. Great job, Mike. Are we not hitting those? Okay. What can I do to help you hit those? Why aren't we able to hit those numbers right now? Why aren't we able to complete these tasks? Maybe they need better technology. Maybe that you don't have a CRM and you're still using a freaking marker board to track stuff and things like that, right? So you have to just get in there, give people clear expectations and guidelines, check in with them and have accountability, and then ask them how you can help them do that better.
Right. Excellent. So I think kind of heading towards the finish line in terms of all the advice you've given today, one thing that was actually particularly kind of positioned to be talked about just with regards to roofing sales reps, but I think can absolutely apply to roofing business owners as well. So to sort of all roofers in general, I wanted to ask you really quickly, you've got this phrase you call, this myth you call the hustle myth. Can you talk about that for a minute and what does that mean?
Yeah. So there's this like attitude in the industry that you have to bust your ass to make a ton of money doing this job, right? And it's like this, almost like this badge of honor that if you're knocking 100 doors a day and you're working 7 days a week all through storm season and you're the first person out and you're the last person to leave, that's like this badge of honor. But I noticed that the guys that are doing that aren't really selling any more than what I did working 8 months out of the year, 4 days a week, 5 hours a day. And so, and I'm not just pointing at myself and going, I'm doing it the best. My point about that is that's what I did. Like my second year, these are just numbers that I remember. In my second year, when I kind of figured some stuff out, I worked for 8 months. I sold 1.25 million, all residential. And I brought home like $240,000. And I was not killing myself doing it. I was like, I woke up whenever I woke up. If I had an adjustment routine, I wake up. I knocked doors like the first month, maybe just to get traction. Then I crushed referrals. And it was just like when I shoot, I score. Like that was my methodology. And so my whole point about this hustle myth is if you think you have to kill yourself to sell $1 million a year in roof sales and make 6 figures, you're doing things wrong. It's not about sweat equity. So what I want people to understand is you don't have to give up your life or your personal freedom or be out there working 50, 60 hours a week to get those numbers. To realize if you wanted to sell $1 million in roofs this year and make 200 grand, you only need to sell 100 deals. That's 2 deals a week. That's nothing. But the problem is most people, they suck so much at door knocking. They suck so much at pitching, right? Closing, and they are not very good at supplementing. So to get to $1 million in sales, they're having to do so much more. It's knock more doors, get more deals, work more hours. Right. Instead, if you increase your average claim size by $4,000 because you're good at supplementing, your closing ratio is literally 90%. So if you sit in front of 10 people and do the sales pitch because it's bulletproof, they're gonna sign. If they have damage, they're gonna sign, right? And if you're really good at door knocking, you only have to go out and knock 10 doors on the street to line up 2 inspections. You're done, you can go home. You do not have to hustle that hard to make insane money doing this. So my whole point with that is if you're crushing yourself with sweat equity right now, having to trade a ton of time, energy, and effort to get those numbers, it's because the methods you're using are not effective enough. And there's a big area of opportunity for you to sharpen your skills with door knocking, closing, objection handling, and supplementing so that when you shoot, you score and you can go home. It's the concept of like, most people are out there with a shotgun, and if they blast enough bullets, they're blowing through ammunition and shooting blindly, basically. Eventually they hit something. I want you to be able to go out and not spray 1,000 bullets a day. I want you to go out with a sniper rifle, shoot, come home. What if you signed a deal a day, 5 days a week, every single week? You'd sell millions of dollars. And that's totally possible if your approaches are good. So again, this all goes back to formal training. Like there are methods that are best practices that actually work. So if you learn the pitches that work, you learn the door pitches that work, you learn the objection handling that actually works, and you use that, when you shoot, you score, you can go home. That's what you'll hear me say that all the time. But that's kind of the concept of that.
I love that methodology. And One of the things I think that you're saying as well is that hustling isn't a bad thing in and of itself, right? Some people may love the grind and that may suit them. Or maybe, for example, they really are struggling in getting sales, or they're not great at closing, or whatever it may be. And so to make the numbers work for them and what they've got to achieve, they got to do it. So it's not that there's anything wrong in and of itself, but what might be wrong is to say like that's the only way to do it, that everybody has to adopt a hustle mentality. And I think one of the things that is nice about what the perspective you're sharing is that, one, back to the ideas of kind of recruiting and retention, that sounds like a lifestyle that is much more appealing than knocking 100 doors a day, right?
Yeah.
And number two, that sounds like a lifestyle that in some senses, and I think there's really a growing, not just in the roofing space, but in home services in general, there's this growing trend of kind of white glove service,
Yeah.
white collar entrepreneurs, or those types who maybe decided to go to college or not to go to college, but are pursuing something other than just working in the office, working the 9 to 5. They want something different. They've heard about this roofing thing. I think that that's an attractive lifestyle to them. It doesn't mean that they're not prepared to work hard, but right as the line goes, they want to work smarter rather than harder. And so very attractive, from that standpoint. So excellent perspective in that regard. As we kind of close out here, always like asking this question when I can. Basically, what is one book or podcast that for you has made the biggest impact on you and your business? And if you can, I mean, feel free to give more than one, but just especially one book, and maybe that you would also recommend, of course, to roofers. So maybe not just the one that's made a difference to you, but in the roofing space and business in general, what's one book or podcast that you have just loved?
I would definitely recommend everybody read Timothy Farris' 4-Hour Workweek. He, especially, like, he's going to talk about some of the things we talked about with delegation. I've mentioned a couple things from his teachings here today on the podcast, but that's an excellent book to just help you like narrow down. His whole thing is like, how can you replace your income working 4 hours a week? Hence the name of the book, right? So it's just going to help you narrow down, delegate, like help focus your time where your time is best spent. That's a great book I'd really recommend. He has a podcast as well. His whole thing is like hacking, right? Like, how's the fastest, easiest, most efficient way to get to my end result? So if you're a business owner, or if you're anybody listening to this, I highly recommend you read that book. There's another book called The E-Myth by, I think it's Michael Berger. And it's basically all about like essential skills for small business. Like, it's for the entrepreneur who wants to actually scale a business that succeeds. And so he talks about everything from leadership to marketing to money management, lead conversion, client fulfillment. He does talk about that franchising effect, like we talked about with the McDonald's stuff as well, which we didn't even really talk about that today, but people can talk this in any other video. Right? But he kind of puts all those pieces together for business owners and just helps them like create their business like a well-oiled machine.
Right.
Because there's a lot, like when you're a business owner and you go, okay, I'm going to run an operation, there are so many parts. You have to generate leads. You have to hire people, train them, manage them, motivate them. You've got accounting, you've got marketing, like there's a ton. And so he really does a great job just tying it together.
Right. And I think it's, one of the things that the E-Myth, I think, really unpacks as well and highlights is the idea that, until you have basically replaced yourself in the business, you're not running a business. You are basically have a job created for yourself within a business. Maybe you make more money as a result, or honestly, maybe you don't make more money. Nevertheless, you still have a job. And so the whole point of the E-Myth is to basically take away the responsibilities, again, the power of delegation, so as to replace yourself in a sense, so that you can basically step away, the business can run on itself, et cetera. And that is something that I think that, I think business owners all over the place find great consolation in consultative settings, in conference settings, in mastermind groups, because I think one of the first things that they often uncover is, oh, wow, you also feel the same way, that you're constantly running around, you're not delegating well, you basically have a job created for yourself within the business. Me too. How do we get out of that? Right. And I think that is really one of the greatest aches and pains of any business owner, roofing aside, in the industry. Any thoughts kind of on that last point as well?
Well, it's the idea of being able to work on your business instead of in it, right? Like most of us, if you're an entrepreneur, you started your business because you wanted the idea of not having to go to work for somebody else. You wanted personal financial freedom, stuff like that. But if what you're lacking is, one, the ability to replace yourself, right? Create delegated roles so that you've hired other people to do those operative parts for you. And second, you don't have repeatable systems in place so that people can run your business for you. You just have a job. You have another job, but more responsibilities, right?
Right.
So, and actually this is a perfect example to talk about kind of that franchising effect. Like I always talk about McDonald's, right? McDonald's is one of the most successful franchises on the planet. They have 38,000 locations worldwide, and it doesn't matter if you go to McDonald's in Juneau, Alaska or Hong Kong, you're going to get the same double cheeseburger with fries, right? And Ronald McDonald, I actually don't know who runs McDonald's. I don't know who owns it. But the owner of McDonald's, just like Sam Walton doesn't have to be in Walmart to run it, right?
Right.
They don't have to be there to run it. What they did was they created a system, a recipe, for lack of better terms, for every part of the business, for their marketing, for their pricing system, how the restaurant looks, what kind of food they serve, the menu, all of it. And they just duplicate it. And when you go into a McDonald's and you look around, do you notice that, like, here's why it's not successful. It's not successful because they have Gordon Ramsay and Rachel Ray whipping up high quality, grass-fed Kobe beef in the back, right?
Right.
They don't have like people with marketing degrees in the front of the store selling people stuff. There's stoned 17-year-old kids running the McDonald's, and the McDonald's does billions of dollars a year.
Right.
Why? Because they just have a system. They delegate the roles. The person that does the drive-through runs the drive-through. The person on the fryer fries French fries. The person at the front takes orders. The person that wipes down tables, they keep the store clean. And that's the machine that runs. And now they're not relying on who is there to run it. They just enter people into the machine and the machine runs. And the owner of McDonald's doesn't have to be there running the McDonald's because he can delegate now the systems that have been in place for these people to follow to the people that he hires and the McDonald's runs. So why can't your roofing company be the same? Well, it's mostly because people don't have formal systems for anything. So they're there and everything's in their head and they're just trying to run everything themselves, and they have to tell this person what to do to get that part of the job done, or they have to do it themselves, or they're relying on people to figure it out on their own, which creates this revolving door of people quitting, and then they're constantly hiring and trying to fill that. So it's just this rat race that's going on that could be completely eliminated by getting formal systems for everything from recruiting to training to supplementing to whatever, and then hiring people to do those specific jobs.
Right.
The end.
Right. Well, great. I think a great place to wrap up. Great book recommendations as well. Again, reading the E-Myth, and also really quick reminder, the first one that you just mentioned,
4 Hour Workweek.
4 Hour Workweek. Tim Farris. Okay. Excellent recommendation. So Becca, thanks so much for sharing so much. If roofers, sales reps, company owners, people want to learn how to supplement more, how to build and grow, how to scale, how to improve their sales strategies, I mean, everything from A to Z, basically, where can they go to find you and learn more and connect with you?
So go to roofsalesmastery.com. You can find all of my programs there. I have 6 different repeatable systems and programs for roofing contractors and salesmen. So whether you're a brand new rep that doesn't know anything at all and you're a toddler in the industry and you need to learn stuff, I've got my ebook Diamonds in the Sky, all the way up to, my advanced sales and supplement training program, my accelerator. And then for business owners, like I've got my repeatable recruiting machine process for hiring people, my new hires training for training brand new people, my sales team management course, and then the supplement stuff. Obviously, I'm sure most people are familiar with that. It's like my flagship product. It's what Roof Sales Mastery is famous for. But the advanced sales and supplement training program and Xactimate Mastery courses are, the claim to fame. That those things pay for anything that you invest in Roof Sales Mastery in supplements alone. So check out roofsalesmastery.com. You can check out and enroll programs right there online.
Awesome. And also just want to chime in as well to say that go to Facebook or YouTube as well, because one of the things that you do so well is share free content, especially free video content. And I mean, on YouTube alone, I mean, there are, I think, hundreds of videos that you have shared, putting out little snippets, little sound bites of all this information. But again, roofsalesmastery.com. Becca, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure having you. And yeah, look forward to catching up again soon.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thank you, Jeremy.